All right. I'm going to talk about what William said, how I got involved in this, and what's happening in the plan. So I haven't got my glasses, but I can read my notes, I think. I think sometimes that, or I feel that life is like a people mover in the airports. You know, you get on it and it moves you. And sometimes I think life doesn't happen to me, but through me, or through all of us. And some people get on the people movers and they want to sit down and not move, and some people run too fast. And I noticed one thing that's happening since the 70s, when I had my first profound experience in therapy, a prenatal experience, but I didn't understand it. My therapist didn't understand it, but my body knew what was happening, but my head didn't have a clue. And those were the days when we didn't have virtual reality. It was like the Velveteen Rabbit, you know. You're loved enough, your eyes get shabby, and you get a little shaky in the limbs, but you're real because there's love in your life, and oxytocin. So, but it's speeded up so fast since the 70s that sometimes I feel like I'm just running to stay on the edge or catch up with things that's happening. So I went back to an experience in the womb, and then I began to look for what was happening. What was this going on in my body that my head had no clue about? And that set me on a quest, which, from my own personal experience, and I noticed in talking to people in the field, very often it's our own personal experience that kind of kicked us into looking at a new paradigm about life, as a matter of fact, not just birth, but life. And there were very few things that I could find out about then in the 70s, and I kept kind of mentioning, but it was definitely not mainstream. And Stan Brock was doing LSD work, but that was in Palo Alto where I was living. It was absolutely not definitely not mainstream. And people would look at me aghast, like I'm this nice Palo Alto housewife, what am I doing talking about things like that? But I was so curious to try to discover what it was. And I was already a therapist, and so I began to try to create ways for how do you do it? I mean, if this is true, and it's not just something that's in my imagination, how do you help people recover what these early memories are, or what their body remembers? And so that's set me on this path where I'm still on it, and I was absolutely thrilled to death when Tom came out with his book. Was it 86, Tom? 82.
No, it was 81.
In the 80s, early 80s, when Tom's book came out, I just absolutely was thrilled to death because I began to feel there was some validity for what I was experiencing. And I immediately got in touch with Tom and went to the first conference in Toronto. Remember that?
Yes.
And yep, I know him. And then David helped so much. I mean, he was probably your first, you know, really got on board with you with this. And we've been doing it ever since, and always, I think, we're on the edge of discovery. The most important thing I feel is that the things that were called anecdotal are now science. So that brain is beginning to affirm what we've been doing with emotion, with our hearts, and with our right brain intuition. And we're getting validation for the work that many of us in this room have been doing. So, along this exploring, I got in touch with anybody I could find who could tell me about this. I forgot to look at my watch. Is somebody taking time? I'm only supposed to have 12 minutes. I'm trying to be on time. What's happening and how can we use it? And now what's happening, I've got something to show you. I'll hold it up, because where are we now? Now, attachment. It's not a thing spiritually you should be non-attached. When people, at least the ones we know, it's not about being unattached. It's about how do you get positive attachment in your life, and how do we create secure attachment with our babies. And that was not a word we used very much, at least I didn't use it until much later. And the revolution that's happened in the brain science is so exciting, even though I don't understand it all. And I depend on some of my friends who have the logo, all the mechanism, all that. I know in my gut what it means when I'm working with somebody. And I know how important it is that I am there without a lot of chatter in my own mind, without a lot of analyzing the way they should be or ought to be, but just being present for them. And a lot of that has to do with some of the research that Dan Siegel's doing, and Bonnie Braden wrote a book called The Brain's Wise Therapist. And it's like we are a part of this. And in fact, I think sometimes that we don't realize how big we are. We're a small organization, but when you look at what is happening, evolutionary happenings on the planet and in consciousness and the development, we aren't alone in this. This is happening all over in many different ways. And I think sometimes we have to step back and have a vision of the incredible influence we're having that ripples out. I went to something in Atlanta and somebody came up to me the other day and said something like, oh, I was there last week, do you remember me? And no. Well, you changed my life 30 years ago. So it's rippling out. We're all doing that. Everything we're doing, whether we think it's enough or not, it's like we are all participating in this incredible awakening of consciousness. And it's so exciting to be involved in that for all of us. So at those days, it was Panna, P-A-N-N-A, was the name of Apppha. It's changed a couple times since then. I got involved with that, with Tom and David and William and some other people that we remember fondly, like David Cheek and Ashley Montague. And I have memories when I think of Ashley. He was such a beautiful man, dancing with my daughter at one of the Apppha conferences. So we have many, many rich memories of this association that we've had. But I want to really support you in taking it out and rippling it out, because the way I actually see this, though the other thing that's happening is the point of the body and the mind. People have talked about that for a long time, but now we're really validating the fact that we are one system. It's like the flour has already been baked into the cake, and we have a cake now, but we separate it out in pieces so we can handle it better. But we're one system. I believe that body, mind, spirit, soul, we are one system, and that we're not alone in this. That at some level that I can think about, but I don't often experience, is that there is one of us doing this. This is one movement we're involved in. I'm a historian. I love reading history books. And I think about the Western movement in the United States and the trappers that came across. And they were pioneers. And they opened up passes in the mountains. And we are pioneers. We are opening up vistas for people. And we have to remember and keep a vision of what we're really doing in Apppha as we move along. Sometimes what I think is that we are talking about not just us in the room, but the we. We are like a huge diamond. And we look out at the world in many different ways. Like some of you are midwives. I've never delivered a baby. And some of us are therapists, and some of us are researchers, and some of us are moms, and some of us are dads. But so much creativity is going on. But we are connected. I think we're connected. Like we are a facet looking out at our particular perspective of this field. But we have each other's backs. And I believe that, and I've experienced that in Apppha, and we don't always agree on exactly how we do this, but we are united in some kind of a vision of a world where our babies are not damaged before they ever walk, while our mothers are cared for, and we have this incredible understanding, because what we're doing is critical, I think, for the human family. So I think my 12 minutes are up. No? You mean I've talked so much? Okay. more minutes. So I want us to get a bigger vision, and I would like Apppha to grow more, but for us to also be very mindful of the fact that what the men here and all of us women and men in the room, we are making a difference in the world. We are making a contribution that's much more vast than I think we even imagine most of the time. And as I look out, I see people like you've done this wonderful work with circumcision, but we're not separate. I think we're part of this huge awakening of awareness that's happening. And sometimes when I look out at things that are happening, I get very upset when I'm talking to some woman who's pregnant and they say, oh, well, I'm going to have Pitocin because that's what the doctor says. And I think back to myself. I was a wife in the 50s. I had my first child in the 50s. And I didn't know Jack. I didn't know, let's see, I didn't know anything about it. Nobody ever talked about it. It was not a subject that was ever spoken of in my New England mom and dad's life. And so I approached birth as what people said, which is just do whatever the doctor says. And now we know that we don't always do what the doctor says, that he's not the medical divinity that I was taught he was, the MD. And the only thing I did right was I didn't want any drugs. But the babies were taken away from me because that's the way it was done. And that's just the way it was done. So those of us who didn't know don't need to blame ourselves or judge ourselves because we did the best we could. We just didn't have the knowledge that the young women have now. There's so much knowledge, and that's the other thing I want to talk about. This is now, 2012. I want you to look at this girl. This was the Santa Cruz weekly magazine that comes out, and the lead story, which was pages and pages, I've got it if anybody wants to read it. This person who's educated, she's an athlete, she speaks 3 languages, makes her living selling her eggs from her body. And my mind goes, oh my gosh, I don't even know exactly how to feel about that because it's so foreign to me in my old way of looking at birth. But it's happening. And this is happening now. All the stuff that's going on. People say, well, do you know what happens to somebody who was conceived in a Petri dish? I don't. Maybe somebody does. But it's like we have so many things going on and it's happening so fast. We are on a people mover here that's going very rapidly. And we need to keep up with this because we don't know what's really going to happen to the babies. There's surrogate mothers and there's all kinds of ways of getting pregnant. And women don't need a man in their life. They can go to the sperm bank. None of that was in the realm of possibility when I was young enough to learn anything about this. So let's keep up with it. Let's keep going on this people mover because it's happening, and it's happening all over the planet, and we are a part of it. Thank you very much.